I need you to understand something before I tell you this story. I need you to know that I wasn't always the kind of man who spies on his wife. I wasn't always the kind of man who creates fake profiles to test the woman he loves. But somewhere between the 7th year of marriage and the discovery that would detonate my entire life, I became exactly that kind of man. And the worst part? The absolute worst part? I got exactly what I was looking for. I found proof. Undeniable, heart-stopping, soul-crushing proof. But it wasn't the proof I expected. Not even close. What I discovered didn't just break my heart. It shattered my understanding of reality itself. And by the time I realized what I'd actually done, by the time I understood the true cost of my paranoia, it was far too late to take any of it back. My name is Daniel, and 3 months ago, I destroyed my marriage by proving I was right about all the wrong things. But let me start at the beginning, back when I still believed I knew who my wife was. I met Sarah 8 years ago at a community art class. I know that sounds like something out of a romantic comedy, but it's true. I was there because my therapist thought I needed a creative outlet after my divorce from my first wife. Sarah was there because she just moved to Portland and didn't know anyone. She sat next to me, looked at my disastrous attempt at painting a bowl of fruit, and said, "I think your apple is having an existential crisis." I married her 14 months later. Sarah was everything my first marriage wasn't. She was spontaneous where Emma had been rigid. She was warm where Emma had been calculating. She laughed easily, loved fiercely, and had this way of making every mundane moment feel like an adventure. When she looked at me, I felt seen in a way I'd never experienced before. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, mostly from home, and I was a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. Our life together was comfortable, predictable in the best way. We had a small house in southeast Portland, 2 cats, and Sunday morning rituals that involved French press coffee and the New York Times crossword puzzle. For 6 years, it was perfect. Not perfect like in movies, but perfect like real life can be when 2 people genuinely love each other and put in the work. We had our fights, sure. She thought I worked too much. I thought she spent too much time on social media. But these were normal couple things, the kind of friction that comes from building a life with another human being. Then something shifted. It was subtle at first, so subtle I told myself I was imagining it. It started about 18 months ago. Sarah began spending more time on her phone. Now, I know what you're thinking. Everyone is on their phones too much. But this was different. She'd be texting someone and smiling, really smiling, the kind of smile that lit up her whole face. When I'd ask who she was talking to, she'd say, just a friend, or work stuff, or nobody important. The answers were always vague, always dismissive, and always delivered with just a slight edge that warned me not to push further. She started going out more. Girls' nights became a weekly thing, sometimes twice a week. She'd come home late, slightly tipsy, smelling like perfume I didn't recognize. She started dressing differently, not drastically, but noticeably. More effort, more makeup, clothes that showed off the body she'd been working so hard at the gym to maintain. When I complimented her, told her she looked beautiful, she'd thank me, but in a way that felt automatic, like I was a stranger giving her a compliment on the street rather than her husband. The sex changed too. Sometimes she was more passionate than ever, almost desperate in her intensity. Other times, she was distant, going through the motions while her mind was clearly somewhere else. The inconsistency was what bothered me most. I couldn't predict which version of Sarah I'd get on any given night. But the real turning point came on a Tuesday evening in March. I come home early from work, planning to surprise her with takeout from her favorite Thai place. When I walked in, I heard her laughing in the home office. Not just laughing, giggling. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in months, maybe longer. I stood in the hallway, listening, and heard her say something I couldn't quite make out, followed by, "You're terrible. Stop making me laugh like this." The tone was flirtatious. Unmistakably, undeniably flirtatious. I walked into the office, and she jumped. Actually jumped in her chair. She quickly closed her laptop and turned to me with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. I asked her who she was talking to, and she said it was her friend Jessica, making plans for the weekend. But I'd heard the way she was talking. That wasn't how you talk to Jessica. That wasn't how you talk to any friend. That night, lying in bed next to my sleeping wife, I felt something dark and cold settle into my chest. It was suspicion, yes, but it was more than that. It was fear. The fear that I was losing her. The fear that she was already gone. The fear that I was about to relive the worst period of my life. The collapse of my first marriage when Emma had an affair. I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself I was projecting my past trauma onto my present relationship. I told myself that Sarah wasn't Emma, that I needed to trust her, that marriage without trust is just two people sleeping in the same bed. But the thoughts wouldn't stop. They multiplied, grew teeth, kept me awake at night, cataloging every suspicious behavior, every unexplained absence, every moment she seemed to be somewhere else even when she was sitting right next to me. I started paying closer attention. I noticed she'd change her phone password. I noticed she'd angle her screen away from me when I walked into a room. I noticed she'd started going to the gym at odd hours, sometimes 9 p.m., sometimes early morning before I was awake. I noticed she'd friend several new people on Instagram. Mostly men, all attractive, all people she claimed were just connections from the design community. One of them in particular caught my attention. His name was Marcus. He was a photographer based in Portland, and according to his very public Instagram profile, he was exactly the kind of guy women found irresistible. Ruggedly handsome, artistically tortured, constantly posting moody black and white photos with captions about authenticity and vulnerability. Sarah had started liking all his posts. Not just liking them. She was often the first like, sometimes within seconds of him posting. I checked her Instagram late one night while she was in the shower. She'd commented on one of his photos, "This is breathtaking. You see the world in such a unique way." The comment had a heart emoji. It was innocuous on the surface, but there was something about it that made my stomach turn. I started going down the rabbit hole. I looked through all their interactions, going back months. There were dozens of comments, all friendly, but with an undertone I couldn't quite name. He'd respond to her comments with inside jokes I didn't understand. She'd respond with laughing emojis and more hearts. Then I found something that made me stop breathing. It was a comment thread from 2 months ago on a photo he'd posted of a coffee shop in the Pearl District. He'd captioned it, "Best coffee in Portland. Fight me." Sarah had commented, "Can't confirm. The company makes it even better." Marcus had responded, "The company was definitely the highlight." She'd replied with a blushing emoji. They'd been to coffee together. My wife had been to coffee with this guy, and she'd never mentioned it to me. Not once. I confronted her the next morning. I tried to be calm, tried not to sound accusatory, but I could hear the tremor in my voice as I asked her about Marcus. She looked confused at first, then annoyed. She told me Marcus was a professional contact, that she'd met him at a design conference last year, that they'd grabbed coffee once to discuss a potential collaboration that never panned out. She asked me why I was going through her Instagram comments, asked me when I'd become the kind of person who stalks his wife's social media. The conversation ended badly. She told me I was being paranoid and controlling. I told her she was being secretive and defensive. We didn't speak for the rest of the day. That night, lying in bed with 2 feet of cold space between us, I made a decision that would change everything. I decided I needed to know the truth. Not the truth she was willing to tell me, but the real truth. The truth people only reveal when they think no one is watching. I decided to test her. For 2 weeks, I wrestled with the idea. It felt wrong, manipulative, a massive violation of trust. But wasn't she the one who had violated trust first? Wasn't I just trying to protect myself from being blindsided again? I rationalized it in 1,000 different ways, built elaborate justifications for what I was planning to do. I created the profile on a Thursday night while Sarah was at one of her girls' nights. I used a fake name, Ryan Mitchell. I used photos of a random attractive guy I found on a modeling agency website from Prague, someone who'd never be traced back to me. I made him a photographer like Marcus. I gave him a carefully curated Instagram aesthetic, moody, artistic, exactly the kind of thing Sarah seemed drawn to lately. I spent hours crafting his personality. Ryan was sensitive but confident. He was passionate about art and social justice. He posted thoughtful captions about the beauty of authentic human connection. He was, in essence, everything I thought Sarah might want but felt she wasn't getting from me. Then I had Ryan send Sarah a friend request on Instagram. I held my breath and waited. She accepted within 2 hours. The next day, I had Ryan like one of her design posts and leave a comment. Your use of negative space here is incredibly sophisticated. Really beautiful work. Sarah responded within minutes. Thank you so much. I'm always nervous about my minimalist pieces. Ryan replied. The best artists are always the hardest on themselves. Would love to see more of your portfolio if you're ever open to sharing. They exchanged several more comments over the next few days. Each interaction was friendly, professional, exactly what you'd expect between two creative professionals. I started to feel ridiculous. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe she was just friendly, just networking, just living her life while I spiraled into paranoid delusions. But then Ryan sent her a direct message. Just something simple. Hey, I hope this isn't too forward, but I'm putting together a small show of local designers and photographers at a gallery in the Pearl District next month. Your work would be perfect for it. Would you be interested in collaborating? Sarah responded within 5 minutes. She said she'd love to hear more about it. They chatted back and forth, and I watched in real time as my wife became animated, excited, fully engaged with this fake person I'd created. Over the next 3 weeks, Ryan and Sarah developed a relationship. They messaged daily. The conversation started professional, but quickly became personal. She told him about her frustrations with her career, how she felt like she wasn't reaching her full potential. She told him about growing up in a small town in Oregon, how she'd always felt like she didn't quite fit anywhere until she moved to Portland. She told him things I already knew, but also things I didn't. Insecurities she'd never shared with me, dreams she'd never mentioned, fears about getting older and running out of time to accomplish everything she wanted. And she never once mentioned that she was married. That detail, or rather, that omission, felt like a knife between my ribs. In all their conversations, spanning hundreds of messages at this point, she never said, I need to check with my husband, or my husband and I, or anything that acknowledged my existence. It was like I'd been erased from her life entirely. Ryan started to flirt more openly. Nothing crude or aggressive, just subtle compliments, playful banter, the kind of attention that makes someone feel seen and special. Sarah responded in kind. She sent him selfies, nothing inappropriate, just casual photos of her at coffee shops or working in her office. But there was something different about these photos. She looked happier in them, more alive than she did in any recent photos of us together. I was in hell. Every day, I'd check the messages between Ryan and Sarah, and every day, I'd find more evidence that she was emotionally investing in this fake person while pulling away from our real marriage. The worst part was that I couldn't say anything. I couldn't confront her because I was the one orchestrating this entire deception. Then, 6 weeks after Ryan's first message, Sarah sent something that made my heart stop. It was late at night, around 11 p.m. I was lying in bed next to her, pretending to sleep, watching her type on her phone in the dim light. She sent Ryan a message. Can I tell you something? I don't usually open up like this, but I feel like I can be honest with you. I've been feeling really disconnected lately. From my life, from the person I thought I'd become. Sometimes I wonder if I made all the right choices, or if I just settled because it was safe and expected. Ryan responded, I think everyone feels that way sometimes. But the question is, what are you going to do about it? Life's too short to live in the safety of what's expected. Sometimes you have to take risks to find out who you really are. Sarah replied, You're right. I know you're right. I don't know how to start. Ryan, maybe you already have. I watched Sarah read that message 3 times. Then she typed something, deleted it, typed something else, deleted that too. Finally, she settled on, Maybe you're right, followed by a smiling emoji with hearts for eyes. My wife had just told a stranger, a fake stranger that I had created, that she was questioning our entire life together. She just opened the door to something that felt dangerously close to infidelity, if it wasn't already there. The next day, Sarah came to me with an announcement. She said she needed to tell me something, and she looked nervous in a way that made my pulse spike. I braced myself for a confession. Instead, she told me she'd been invited to participate in an art show at a gallery in the Pearl District. She said it was a great opportunity for her career, a chance to network with other designers and photographers. She said the curator was someone named Ryan Mitchell, and she'd been talking to him about it for a few weeks. She lied to me. Not directly, but by omission. She made it sound like Ryan had just contacted her recently, not that they'd been talking daily for over a month. She made it sound professional and casual, not intimate and emotionally charged. I told her that was great, that I was proud of her. Inside, I was screaming. The art show was scheduled for a Friday night, 3 weeks away. Ryan told Sarah he'd love to meet in person before then to discuss the details, maybe grab coffee and talk about her vision for the piece she'd display. Sarah agreed immediately. They set a date for the following Tuesday at a coffee shop in the Pearl District. That Tuesday morning, Sarah spent an unusual amount of time getting ready. She changed outfits 3 times. She did her makeup carefully, the way she used to when we first started dating. She wore perfume, the expensive kind she usually saved for special occasions. When I asked her where she was going, she told me she had a meeting with a potential client. Another lie by omission. I called in sick to work. I followed her. I know how that sounds. I know exactly how pathetic and controlling and disturbed that makes me appear. But I had to see it. I had to witness whatever was about to happen between my wife and the person she thought was Ryan Mitchell. I parked across the street from the coffee shop and watched through the window as Sarah sat at a corner table, nervously checking her phone. She looked beautiful. She looked happy in a way that made me want to cry. She looked like she was about to meet someone important, someone who mattered, someone who definitely wasn't her husband. She waited for 20 minutes, checking her phone constantly. I watched her expression shift from anticipation to confusion to disappointment. Ryan Mitchell wasn't coming. Ryan Mitchell didn't exist. Finally, Sarah texted Ryan, "Hey, I'm here. Are you close?" I watched my wife send that message, watched her stare at her phone, waiting for a response from a ghost. I didn't respond. I sat in my car and watched my wife get stood up by a person I'd invented, and I felt something dark and terrible settle into my bones. Because I just realized I had proof. Undeniable proof. Sarah had gotten dressed up, lied to me about where she was going, and showed up to meet another man. The emotional affair I'd suspected was real. I'd been right all along. But in that moment, watching her disappointment through a coffee shop window, I also realized something else. I had no idea what to do with this information. That night, Sarah came home subdued. She said her meeting had been canceled at the last minute, that she'd wasted the afternoon waiting around. I asked if she wanted to talk about it, and she said no, it wasn't important. We ate dinner in near silence, the weight of her deception and my deception pressing down on both of us like atmosphere pressure before a storm. I couldn't sleep. I lay next to her, listening to her breathe, thinking about what I'd witnessed. The rational part of my brain told me to confront her, to lay out everything I knew, to force us into an honest conversation about the state of our marriage. But I didn't, because some sick, twisted part of me wanted to see how far she'd go. I wanted to understand the full depth of her betrayal before I called her on it. So Ryan apologized. The next morning, I had Ryan send Sarah a message. "I'm so sorry about yesterday. I had a family emergency and had to leave town suddenly. I feel terrible about standing you up. Can I make it up to you? Maybe dinner this weekend?" Sarah's response came within minutes. "Don't worry about it. I hope everything's okay with your family. And yes, dinner sounds great. Friday work for you?" My wife had just agreed to go to dinner with another man. Not coffee, not a professional meeting. Dinner, on a Friday night. The night we usually ordered pizza and watched movies together. That Friday, Sarah told me her friend Jessica was going through a rough breakup and needed support. She said they were going to have a girls' night, just the two of them, probably get dinner and drinks. She said she might be home late. She wore a black dress I bought her for our 5th anniversary. She kissed me on the cheek before she left and told me not to wait up. I waited exactly 15 minutes after she left, then I followed her again. She drove to a restaurant in the Pearl District, an upscale Italian place with white tablecloths and candles. She parked, checked her makeup in the rearview mirror, and walked inside. She looked nervous and excited and guilty all at once. I parked down the street and watched the entrance. My plan had been to just see her go in, confirm she was lying about Jessica, then leave. But I couldn't make myself drive away. I sat there for 20 minutes, 30, 40, my mind conjuring increasingly awful scenarios of what was happening inside. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to see. I needed to witness the full extent of what my wife was capable of. I walked to the restaurant and stood outside, looking through the large front windows. It took me a moment to spot her, but then I saw her at a table near the back. She was alone, sitting by herself at a table for two, checking her phone, looking around anxiously, waiting for Ryan Mitchell, who would never arrive. I watched her for 30 minutes. I watched her order a drink. I watched her check her phone obsessively. I watched her expression shift from anticipation to confusion to embarrassment to resignation. The waiter came by several times, clearly asking if she wanted to order, if she was still waiting for someone. Each time, she smiled politely and said something I couldn't hear, probably asking for just a few more minutes. After 45 minutes, she paid for her drink and left. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. I got back to my car before she reached the parking lot and drove home, making sure I arrived before she did. When she came through the door an hour later, I was on the couch, pretending to watch TV. She looked exhausted and sad. I asked her how Jessica was doing, and she said it was a rough night, but she thought her friend would be okay. She went straight to our bedroom without saying anything else. I'd proven it again. My wife had lied to me, gotten dressed up for another man, and sat alone in a restaurant waiting for him. The affair, or whatever this was undeniable. But instead of feeling vindicated, I felt sick. I felt like a monster. Because I'd also done something undeniable. I'd created an entire person to manipulate my wife, had emotionally manipulated her into revealing her worst impulses, had watched her suffer the consequences of trying to betray me with someone who didn't exist. And the worst part? I still didn't know why she was doing this. I had proof of what, but no understanding of why. So I had Ryan reach out again. Another apology. Another excuse. Another invitation. This time, Ryan suggested they skip the public meeting and do something more private. He said he had a small studio space where he developed photos, that she should come see it, that they could talk without distractions. Sarah hesitated this time. She didn't respond immediately. When she did, 12 hours later, her message was different. Ryan, I need to be honest with you. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm married and I love my husband, but I've been feeling so lost lately. Talking to you has made me feel like myself again, like there's more to life than just a routine I've settled into. But I know this is wrong. I know I shouldn't be talking to you like this, and I definitely shouldn't be meeting up with you. I just don't know how to stop. I read that message sitting in my office at work, and I had to close my door because I couldn't breathe. My wife loved me. She said it explicitly, but she also said talking to my fake persona made her feel alive in a way her real marriage didn't. She acknowledged what we were doing was wrong, but said she didn't know how to stop. Ryan responded, I understand, and I respect your honesty. But can I ask you something? When was the last time you did something just because it made you feel alive? When was the last time you took a risk, not because it was safe or expected, but because it was what you truly wanted? Life is short, Sarah. Sometimes the wrong thing is actually the right thing, if it leads you to who you're supposed to be. It was manipulative. It was predatory. It was exactly the kind of thing an actual affair partner would say to someone in a vulnerable state. And I was the one saying it. I was the predator. Sarah didn't respond for 2 days. During that time, she was withdrawn at home, barely speaking to me, clearly wrestling with something internal. I wanted to reach out, wanted to close the distance between us, but I didn't know how without revealing what I'd done. Then, on Sunday night, while I was in the shower, Sarah sent Ryan a message. I didn't see it until I got out. Okay, let's meet. Your studio. Tuesday afternoon. But Ryan, this is just a talk, okay? I need you to understand that. I'm not looking for. I just want to understand what I'm feeling. I want someone to see me for who I am, not who I'm supposed to be. My wife had agreed to go to a private location to meet a man she'd been emotionally intimate with for months. A man she'd been lying to me about. A man who didn't exist. I spent the next 2 days in agony. Every time I looked at Sarah, I saw someone I didn't recognize. Every time she touched me, I felt like I was touching a stranger. But I also saw myself, saw what I'd become, what I'd created, the trap I'd built that we were both now caught in. Tuesday came. Sarah told me she had an important client meeting in the afternoon and would probably be gone for a few hours. She kissed me goodbye, a real kiss this time, not the perfunctory one she'd been giving me. It felt like an apology, or maybe a farewell. I followed her again. I couldn't help myself. I had to see what she would do when she arrived at an address that didn't exist for a meeting with a person who had never been real. Sarah drove to the address Ryan had given her, an industrial area in northwest Portland, all warehouses and art studios. She parked in front of a building, checked the address on her phone, then got out her car. She was wearing jeans and a nice blouse, had her hair down in the way I loved. She looked beautiful and terrified and determined all at once. She walked to the door of the building, then stopped. She stood there for a long time, maybe 5 minutes, just staring at the door. I could see her from where I was parked a block away. I watched her pull out her phone, stare at it, put it back. She was clearly having a crisis, trying to decide whether to go through with it. Finally, she turned around. She walked back to her car, got in, and just sat there. She didn't start the car. She just sat with her head in her hands. After a few minutes, I could see her shoulders shaking. She was crying. Then she pulled out her phone and typed something. I checked Ryan's messages immediately. I can't do this. I'm sorry, Ryan. I thought I could, but I can't. I'm married to a good man who doesn't deserve this. I've been selfish and confused and looking for something that I should be finding in my own life, not in someone else. I need to work on my marriage. I need to figure out why I've been so willing to throw away something real for something that's just fantasy. I'm deleting this app, and I'm going to tell my husband everything. I'm so sorry for wasting your time. I sat in my car, reading that message over and over, feeling something break apart inside my chest. She hadn't gone through with it. At the final moment, when faced with the actual reality of betrayal, she'd chosen me. She'd chosen our marriage. But she didn't know there was no Ryan. She didn't know I'd orchestrated this entire thing. She didn't know that her confession of almost betrayal was being read by the husband she'd almost betrayed. And now I had to decide what to do with that knowledge. I beat her home and was sitting on the couch when she walked through the door 30 minutes later. She looked drained, like she'd been through a war. She sat down next to me, and I could feel her gathering courage to speak. Daniel, she said quietly, we need to talk. I need to tell you something, and it's going to be hard to hear, but I can't keep lying to you. This was it, the moment of truth. She was going to confess, going to tell me everything, and I would have to decide whether to tell her what I'd done or let her believe Ryan was real. But before she could continue, I spoke, because suddenly I couldn't hold it in anymore. I couldn't let her confess to something I'd manipulated her into doing. I know, I said. I know about Ryan. Her face went white. Al, what do you mean? I created him, I said. And then I told her everything. The fake profile, the fake identity, the months of messages, the coffee shop, the restaurant, the studio. I told her I'd been following her, testing her, trying to prove she was having an affair. I watched her face cycle through shock, disbelief, horror, and finally, something that looked like disgust. When I finished, she sat in silence for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold in a way I'd never heard before. You created an entire fake person to trick me? You manipulated me for months, watched me fall into an emotional affair with someone who didn't exist, and you did it intentionally. I needed to know, I said weakly. I needed to know if you'd really do it. So you made it happen. You created the exact conditions for me to fail and then watched me fail. You set a trap and then blamed me for walking into it. You were already pulling away from me. I protested. You were already being secretive, already changing your passwords, already lying about where you were going. I didn't create that. I just revealed what was already there. Sarah stood up. She was shaking, but her voice was steady. Do you know what I was doing all those nights I came home late? Do you know what those girls' nights actually were? I said nothing. I was seeing a therapist, Daniel. I started therapy 4 months ago because I've been struggling with depression and anxiety, and I didn't want to worry you because you were already stressed about work. The friend I was talking to, the one that made me laugh, that was my therapist's daughter who runs support groups for people dealing with mental health issues. She was sending me funny memes to help me get through bad days. The gym at weird hours? I was going when it was empty because my therapist suggested exercise as a coping mechanism, but I was self-conscious about working out in front of people. I felt the floor dropping out from under me. And Marcus, The photographer you were so jealous of? He's gay, Daniel. Happily married to a man named Trevor. We did go to coffee because he was going through his own mental health crisis and I was trying to help him find resources. The reason I didn't mention it to you is because he asked me to keep it private until he came out to his family. Sarah, I started, but she held up a hand. I changed my phone password because my therapist suggested I create healthier boundaries around constant availability. I started dressing differently because I was trying to feel like myself again instead of just someone's wife or someone's employee. I was making friends in the design community because I was isolated and lonely, Daniel. Lonely in my own marriage. Why didn't you just tell me? I asked, and I could hear the desperation in my voice. Because you never asked. You never asked me how I was really doing or what I was struggling with. You just assumed the worst, and then created an elaborate scheme to prove yourself right. You made me a villain in a story you wrote, and then you watched me try to become that villain because you convinced me that's what I was supposed to be. I almost cheated on you with someone who doesn't exist, Daniel. And that's on me. That's my failure and my shame, and I will have to live with that for the rest of my life. But you created him. You built him specifically to appeal to everything I was missing in our marriage, every vulnerability I had, every insecurity I'd been struggling with. You weaponized my loneliness against me. So tell me, who actually betrayed whom here? The question hung in the air between us like smoke. I had no answer, because she was right. Everything she'd said was right. Sarah went to our bedroom and started packing a bag. I followed her, begging her to stay, to talk this through, to give me a chance to fix this. She turned to me with tears streaming down her face. Do you know what the worst part is? The absolute worst part? I was going to tell you everything tonight. I was going to confess that I'd been having an emotional affair, that I'd almost met up with someone, that I needed us to go to couples therapy because our marriage was in trouble. I was going to be honest with you. Finally, completely honest. But I can't do that now because I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know if what I felt for Ryan was genuine or if it was just a response to the psychological manipulation you were putting me through. I don't know if I'm actually capable of infidelity or if you just convinced me I was. Where are you going? I asked. To Jessica's, the friend you thought I was lying about. She's real, Daniel. And she's been begging me to leave you for months because she could see how unhappy I was even if I couldn't. Sarah, please. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can work through this together. She looked at me with something that might have been pity. Daniel, I almost had an affair with a fake person you created to test me. You spent months manipulating me, lying to me, watching me suffer, all so you could prove you were right about me being untrustworthy. What exactly is there to fix? The marriage died the moment you decided to test it. You don't test something you truly believe in. You just destroyed the only thing you wanted to prove was real. She left. I stood in our empty house, surrounded by evidence of our life together, and tried to understand how I'd gotten here. How I'd taken love and twisted it into suspicion. How I'd taken a marriage that needed help and turned it into a crime scene. How I'd created the exact betrayal I was afraid of. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was still coming. 3 days after Sarah left, I got a call from Jessica. Not Sarah, Jessica. The real Jessica, who apparently was very real and very angry. You need to see something, she said. No greeting, no preamble. I'm sending you a link. Watch it. All of it. She hung up. A minute later, my phone buzzed with a message containing a YouTube link. It was unlisted, not public, but when I clicked it, I found myself watching a video titled, Why I've Been Acting Weird, a Confession. It was Sarah. She'd filmed it a week ago, before everything exploded. In the video, she was sitting in our home office, looking directly at the camera with red-rimmed eyes. Hi everyone, she said in the video. This is probably the hardest video I've ever had to make. Some of you have noticed I've been distant lately, not posting as much, not as engaged in the community. I want to explain why, and I want to do it publicly because I think it's important to be honest about mental health struggles. My hand started shaking. About 6 months ago, I started experiencing severe anxiety and depression. It got to the point where I could barely get out of bed some mornings. I felt disconnected from my work, from my friends, from my life. I started questioning everything, whether I'd made the right career choices, whether I was good enough, whether I even knew who I was anymore outside of my roles as someone's wife and someone's employee. She wiped tears from her face. I started therapy 4 months ago, and it's been really hard, but really necessary. My therapist has been helping me understand that a lot of my anxiety comes from feeling like I've lost myself, like I've been performing a version of me that makes everyone else comfortable instead of being authentic. She suggested I try reconnecting with my creative community, that I try making new friends who could see me as more than just my roles. So I did. I started reaching out to people in the design community. I started going to galleries and shows. I started trying to remember who I was before I became so small. And it's been helping. Slowly, it's been helping. She took a deep breath in the video. But here's the thing I need to confess, and it's embarrassing and shameful, and my therapist thinks I should talk about it, because hiding shame only makes it grow. A few weeks ago, I started talking to someone online, a photographer named Ryan, and I let it become more than professional networking. I let it become emotionally intimate. I told him things I hadn't told my husband. I looked forward to his messages. I started thinking about him in ways I shouldn't. My chest tightened watching this. I never physically cheated. I need to be clear about that. But I was having an emotional affair, and that's still a betrayal. And I almost made it worse. I almost agreed to meet him privately. I drove to the address he gave me, and I sat in my car, and I had every intention of going inside. She was crying fully now in the video. But I couldn't do it. Because as confused and lost as I've been, as disconnected as I've felt from my marriage, I love my husband. I love Daniel. And he deserves better than a wife who seeks validation from strangers online because she's too afraid to be honest about what she needs. She looked directly at the camera, directly at me watching this a week later. So Daniel, if you're watching this, and you will be, because I'm going to show it to you tonight, I need you to know that I almost betrayed you. I need you to know that I've been struggling and I've been handling it in ways that were selfish and wrong. I need you to know that I want to fix this, that I want to fight for us, but I can't do it alone. I need you to meet me halfway. I need you to see that I'm drowning and help pull me out instead of just watching from shore. The video ended. I sat staring at my phone, numb. She'd made this video. She'd planned to confess everything to me. She'd been preparing to fight for our marriage. And I made sure she never got the chance to show me. Because that Tuesday, the day she was supposed to tell me everything, that was the day I'd confessed to her about Ryan first. I'd cut her off before she could speak. I'd stolen her confession by making my own. She'd never even gotten to show me the video. I called Jessica back immediately. When did Sarah send you this? She didn't send it to me. I found it in her drafts when she asked me to grab her laptop from your house. She never got to show it to you, did she? No, I whispered. Do you understand what you did, Daniel? Do you understand what you took from her? She was going to come clean. She was going to be vulnerable and honest. And you preempted it by revealing your own manipulation. You made her confession about you instead of about her healing. You turned her moment of courage into your moment of... She paused, searching for the word. Your moment of what? Vindication? Control? Whatever it was, you stole something from her that she can't get back. I need to talk to her. I need to explain. Explain what? That you're sorry you manipulated her, but also you were right to be suspicious because she was actually considering cheating? That's not an apology, Daniel. That's just you trying to justify what you did by pointing at what she almost did. You created Ryan specifically to make her fail. You built him to be everything you're not, everything she was missing. You didn't discover a betrayal. You engineered one. That's not fair. She still made the choice to. Did she? Jessica's voice was sharp. Did she really have a choice when you were psychologically manipulating her for months? When you were creating a fantasy specifically designed to exploit her vulnerabilities? Daniel, what you did isn't just a breach of trust. It's psychological abuse. It's gaslighting. You made her doubt her reality, her judgment, her own mind. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew she was right. Sarah's staying with me for now. Jessica continued. She's a mess. She can't sleep, can't eat. She keeps saying she's a terrible person, that she deserves what happened, that she proved she was never good enough for you. Do you understand? You didn't just catch her in a moment of weakness. You convinced her that she's fundamentally broken. I need to see her. I need to apologize. She doesn't want to see you. She said if you show up here, she'll file a restraining order. She's serious, Daniel. You need to give her space." Jessica hung up. I sat in the silence of our house, Sarah's confession video still paused on my phone, her tear-stained face frozen on the screen. And then I did something I should have done months ago. I called my therapist. Dr. Martinez had been my therapist during my first divorce. I'd stopped seeing her when Sarah and I got married, convinced I'd healed, convinced I'd moved past my trust issues. Now, sitting in her office 3 days later, I realized I'd learned nothing. "Tell me about your first marriage," she said. "You know about my first marriage. We talked about it for a year. Tell me again, because I think you need to hear yourself say it." So I told her. I told her about Emma, about how perfect our relationship seemed from the outside, about how I'd ignored all the signs, the distance, the lies, the nights she came home late, about how I'd found out she was having an affair with her boss, about how she'd admitted it had been going on for over a year, that she'd been planning to leave me, but hadn't found the right time, about how I'd felt like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. "And what did you learn from that experience?" Dr. Martinez asked. "That I can't trust anyone, that people lie, that the person sleeping next to you can be living an entirely different life. Is that really what you learned, Daniel? Or is that what you decided to believe?" I didn't answer. "Let me offer an alternative interpretation," she said. "Emma betrayed you, and it was devastating. But instead of processing that trauma and learning to trust again, you decided to protect yourself by never fully trusting anyone. You married Sarah, a woman who is nothing like Emma, and you spent your entire marriage waiting for her to betray you. And when she didn't betray you fast enough, when she didn't fulfill the prophecy you'd created in your mind, you decided to manufacture the betrayal yourself. That's not what I did. I was just trying to. You were trying to prove you were right. You were trying to validate the worldview you developed after Emma. If Sarah betrayed you, it meant you weren't wrong to distrust her. It meant your paranoia was actually wisdom. It meant you could avoid examining the real issue, which is that you never healed from your first marriage, and you brought all that unresolved trauma into your second one. I felt something crack open inside me. But she did almost cheat. I didn't make that up. She admitted it. Yes, she did. And that's her responsibility to own. But Daniel, you created the perfect conditions for that to happen. You noticed she was struggling, noticed she was pulling away, and instead of asking why, instead of offering support or suggesting therapy, or even just having an honest conversation, you decided to test her. You treated your marriage like a crime scene and your wife like a suspect. "I was scared," I said, and my voice broke. "I was terrified of going through that pain again." "I know, but Daniel, fear isn't a justification for manipulation. Your trauma isn't a permission slip to traumatize someone else. And that's what you did. You traumatized Sarah. You made her question her own mind, her own judgment, her own character. You convinced her she was capable of something she'd spent her whole life believing she wasn't. And even though she ultimately made the right choice, she'll always wonder if she would have made that choice if you hadn't set the whole thing up. I put my head in my hands. I don't know how to fix this. You might not be able to," Dr. Martinez said gently. "That's the truth you need to accept. Some things can't be fixed, only learned from. Sarah may never forgive you. She may never trust you again. And you need to be okay with that consequence. How can I be okay with losing her? Because the alternative is to keep doing what you're doing, to keep manipulating reality to fit your narrative, to keep refusing to take full responsibility for your actions, to keep blaming your trauma instead of healing from it. Daniel, Sarah isn't the only person you've hurt here. You've hurt yourself too. You've proven to yourself that you're exactly what you were afraid of being. Someone who destroys the things they love out of fear of losing them. That night, I wrote Sarah a letter. Not an email or a text, an actual handwritten letter. "Dear Sarah, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to respond. But I need to say these things, even if they fall on deaf ears. I watched your video, the one you made to show me, the confession you were going to share before I ruined everything. And I need you to know that I'm so sorry I took that from you. I'm sorry I stole your moment of courage and turned it into my moment of manipulation. You were right about everything you said to me. I did create Ryan to make you fail. I did engineer a betrayal. I did take your vulnerabilities and weaponize them against you. I told myself I was trying to uncover the truth, but the truth is I was trying to prove I was right to be afraid. I was trying to validate my own trauma by creating new trauma. I've been seeing my therapist again. She helped me understand something I should have understood years ago. I never healed from my first marriage. I never processed the betrayal, never worked through the trust issues, never actually dealt with any of it. I just carried it all into our relationship and waited for history to repeat itself. And when it didn't repeat fast enough, I forced it. You were struggling, and instead of helping you, I tested you. You were drowning, and instead of throwing you a lifeline, I watched to see if you'd sink. You were crying out in the only ways you knew how, and I interpreted all of it as evidence of betrayal instead of as a call for help. I know now that all those nights you came home late, you were doing the hard work of trying to heal yourself. I know that the secrecy wasn't about hiding an affair. It was about protecting me from your pain because you thought I couldn't handle it. I know that your distance wasn't rejection. It was depression. I know that everything I interpreted as evidence of your guilt was actually evidence of your struggle. And I'm so sorry I didn't see that. I'm sorry I didn't ask the right questions. I'm sorry I didn't notice that the woman I love was suffering. I'm sorry I was so focused on my own fear that I couldn't see your pain. You said you almost cheated with someone who doesn't exist, and that it's your failure and your shame. And yes, that's true. You made choices that hurt me and hurt our marriage. But I need you to know something. You're not a bad person. You're not broken. You're not fundamentally flawed or untrustworthy. You're a person who was struggling with mental health issues, who felt alone in her marriage, who was manipulated by someone she should have been able to trust. You're a person who, when faced with the actual reality of betrayal, chose her marriage. You turned around. You came back. You chose me, even though I'd spent months trying to convince you not to. That matters, Sarah. It matters more than anything else. In the moment that actually counted, you made the right choice. Not because I was there watching or because you were afraid of getting caught, but because you love me and you value what we have. Or what we had. I don't know if we can fix this. I don't know if we should even try. But I need you to know that I understand now what I did to you. I understand that I didn't just betray your trust. I betrayed your reality. I made you doubt yourself in ways that will probably take years to undo. I turned your vulnerability into a trap. I made your healing journey into a test. And I'm so sorry. If you decide you want to try therapy, either alone or together, I'll do whatever you need. If you decide you want a divorce, I won't fight it. If you decide you need more time, I'll wait. Whatever you need, Sarah. For once, I'm going to trust you to know what's best for you instead of deciding for you what's best for us. I love you. I've always loved you. I just forgot how to show it in any way that didn't involve control. I'm sorry for everything. Daniel. I mailed the letter and waited. One day, then two, then a week. No response. I threw myself into therapy, started unpacking all the ways my first marriage had damaged me, all the coping mechanisms I developed that had turned toxic. I started understanding that trust isn't about guarantees. It's about being willing to be vulnerable, even knowing you might get hurt. 2 weeks after I sent the letter, I got a text from an unknown number. It was from Sarah's therapist. Sarah has asked me to mediate a conversation between the two of you. This would be in my office, with strict ground rules about respectful communication. She's not ready to see you alone, but she's willing to talk with professional support. Are you interested? I responded immediately, yes. Absolutely yes. Whenever she's ready. We scheduled it for the following Thursday. I showed up 15 minutes early, terrified and hopeful in equal measure. When Sarah walked in, she looked different, thinner, more tired, but also somehow stronger. She sat down across from me and didn't meet my eyes. Her therapist, Dr. Chun, explained the ground rules. We each got uninterrupted time to speak. No accusations, no defensiveness, just truth. Sarah would go first. She took a deep breath and finally looked at me. I've been in therapy 3 times a week since I left, unpacking everything, the depression, the emotional affair, what happened with Ryan, our marriage. And I've realized some things I need to tell you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. First, I need to own my part in this. I was having an emotional affair. I was lying to you about where I was going and who I was talking to. Even though some of those lies were omissions, and some were about protecting my mental health journey, some of them were about protecting my connection with Ryan. And that was wrong. I violated our marriage vows, and I hurt you, and I'm sorry. Sarah, Dr. Chun held up a hand. She's not finished. Sarah continued. But second, I need you to understand what you did to me. You didn't just test me, Daniel. You broke something in me. Every day since I found out Ryan wasn't real, I've questioned every feeling I have. When I'm attracted to someone, I wonder if it's real or if I'm just broken. When I feel disconnected from my life, I wonder if it's actual depression or if I'm just looking for an excuse to be unfaithful. You didn't just catch me in a betrayal. You made me believe I'm the kind of person who's fundamentally capable of betrayal. You turned my moment of weakness into my defining characteristic. Tears were streaming down her face now. I lie awake at night, replaying every conversation I had with Ryan, trying to figure out what was real and what was manipulation. Trying to figure out which parts of me that responded to him were authentic and which parts were just psychologically engineered responses to your manipulation. You took away my ability to trust myself, Daniel, and I don't know if I'll ever get that back. I'm so sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry. I know you are, and I believe you, but sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't give me back the ability to trust my own judgment. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that the person I loved most in the world spent months treating me like an experiment. I almost cheated on you with a person you created. I will have to carry that shame for the rest of my life. But you created him, Daniel. You built a trap specifically designed to catch me, and then you act surprised that it worked. That's not love. That's not even paranoia. That's cruelty. The word hung in the air between us. Cruelty. Is that what I'd done? Had I been cruel? Yes, I realized. I had been. Unintentionally, perhaps. But intention doesn't erase impact. It was my turn to speak. I told her everything I'd written in the letter and more. I told her about the work I'd been doing in therapy, about the patterns I was finally starting to see. I told her I understood if she couldn't forgive me, couldn't trust me, couldn't stay married to me. But I need you to know, I said, that you're not broken. What you felt for Ryan was real, even if Ryan wasn't. You were lonely and struggling and looking for connection, and there's nothing wrong with that. The problem was that you were looking for it outside our marriage. Yes, but Sarah, I made sure you had to. I noticed you pulling away, and instead of pulling you closer, I pushed you further. I created the distance, and then blamed you for trying to fill it. She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, I don't know if I can be married to you anymore. I don't know if I can wake up next to someone who I know is capable of that kind of manipulation. Even if you've changed, even if you're in therapy, even if you're genuinely sorry, I don't know if I can ever feel safe with you again. I understand, I said, and I did. Whatever you need, Sarah. I'll respect your decision. I need time, she said. I need space to figure out who I am when I'm not performing for someone else's expectations. I need to know if I can heal from this, if I can learn to trust myself again. And I need to do that without you there watching, without you in my head analyzing my every move. Okay, I said. Take all the time you need. She stood up to leave, then paused at the door. Daniel, for what it's worth, I do believe you love me. I just don't think you know how to love someone without trying to control them. And until you figure that out, we can't be together. She left. Dr. Chun and I sat in silence for a moment. How do I fix this? I asked her. You don't, she said. You let me be broken. You accept that some things you break can't be fixed, only learned from. And you do the work to make sure you never break something like this again. That was 3 months ago. Sarah filed for divorce 6 weeks after our mediated conversation. I didn't contest it. I signed every paper, agreed to every term, did everything I could to make the process as painless as possible for her. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks ago. We divided our assets, sold the house, split the proceeds. We said goodbye to the life we'd built together. It was remarkably civil, remarkably sad, and remarkably final. I'm living in a small apartment in southeast Portland now. I see Dr. Martinez twice a week. I'm doing the work, the real work, of understanding my trauma, healing my wounds, learning how to trust without testing, how to love without controlling. I've learned some things in these months. Hard things, painful things, true things. I've learned that fear isn't protection. It's a prison. My fear of being betrayed again didn't keep me safe. It made me into someone who betrayed first. It turned me into the villain of my own story. I've learned that trauma doesn't give you permission to traumatize others. My pain from Emma didn't justify what I did to Sarah. Hurt people, yes, but that's an explanation, not an excuse. I had a responsibility to heal my wounds before I brought them into a new relationship. I've learned that trust isn't about having proof or guarantees. It's about being willing to be vulnerable, knowing you might get hurt, and choosing connection anyway. Real trust is a leap of faith, not a carefully constructed safety net. I've learned that testing love destroys it. The second you start testing whether someone loves you, you've already decided they don't. You've already withdrawn your trust. And love can't survive without trust. It just becomes surveillance. Most importantly, I've learned that I wasn't trying to catch Sarah in a betrayal. I was trying to create one. Because if she betrayed me, it meant I was right to be afraid. It meant my worldview was correct. It meant I didn't have to do the terrifying work of actually trusting someone. I was so afraid of being hurt again that I hurt her first. I destroyed the thing I was trying to protect. Last week, I ran into Sarah at a coffee shop in the Pearl District, the same one where she'd waited for Ryan that first time. She was with someone, a woman I didn't recognize, and they were laughing over something on a laptop. Sarah looked happy. Not the careful, performed happiness she'd shown me toward the end of our marriage, but genuine joy. She saw me, and her smile faded slightly, but she didn't look away. She nodded, just a small acknowledgement, and I nodded back. Then she turned back to her friend and continued their conversation. I got my coffee and left. That brief interaction told me everything I needed to know. She was healing. She was finding herself again. She was building a life that didn't include me, and she was doing it with grace and strength. And me? I'm learning to live with the consequences of my choices. I'm learning that regret is a teacher, not a punishment. I'm learning that the worst betrayal wasn't Sarah's almost affair or my manufactured test. It was my betrayal of the love we'd built, my refusal to trust in something good because I was so convinced it would go bad. I regret what I did to Sarah every single day. I regret that I took a woman who was struggling and made her struggle worse. I regret that I took a marriage that needed help and turned it into a psychological experiment. I regret that I was so focused on protecting myself that I destroyed the person I was trying to protect. But here's what I've finally accepted. Regret only matters if it changes you. If I just sit in this apartment and feel sorry for myself, if I just wallow in guilt without doing the work to be better, then Sarah's pain was for nothing. My mistakes taught me nothing. This whole terrible situation becomes just a tragedy with no redemption. So I'm doing the work. I'm in therapy. I'm joining support groups for people with trust issues. I'm reading books about healthy relationships and emotional intelligence. I'm volunteering at a crisis hotline, trying to help others in ways I failed to help my wife. I'm learning to sit with discomfort instead of trying to control it away. I don't know if I'll ever be in another relationship. Honestly, I don't know if I should be. But if I am, I know I'll be different. I know I'll be someone who trusts without testing, who loves without controlling, who faces fear by moving through it instead of trying to manage it. Last month, I sent Sarah one final message. I didn't expect a response, didn't even want one really. I just needed to say it. I know I don't have the right to send you this, but I needed you to know that I saw you at the coffee shop, and I saw how happy you looked, and I'm glad. I'm glad you're healing. I'm glad you're building a life that brings you joy. I'm sorry I couldn't be part of that life, but I'm grateful I got to witness, even briefly, your recovery. You deserved better than what I gave you. I hope wherever you go and whoever you meet, they see how extraordinary you are. Take care of yourself, Sarah. You are always worth so much more than I made you feel. She responded 2 days later with just 3 words, "Thank you, Daniel." And that was enough. It had to be enough. Because this isn't a story about redemption or reconciliation. This isn't a story where I learn my lesson and win back the girl and everything works out. This is a story about consequences, about how fear can poison love, about how trauma, unhealed, becomes trauma inflicted, about how the things we do to protect ourselves can become the very things that destroy us. I made a fake online profile to test my wife. What I discovered wasn't her capacity for betrayal. It was mine. I discovered that I was capable of manipulation, of cruelty disguised as caution, of destroying something beautiful because I couldn't believe it was real. I discovered that I was so afraid of being the victim again that I became the perpetrator. I discovered that paranoia and love cannot coexist, that suspicion and trust are mutually exclusive, that you cannot test something you truly believe in. And now I'm living with that truth. Every single day, I wake up and I live with what I did. I live with the memory of Sarah's face when I told her about Ryan. I live with the knowledge that I took a woman who was struggling with mental health issues and made her question her fundamental character. I live with the fact that I destroyed my marriage not through neglect or through growing apart, but through active, sustained psychological manipulation. There's no redemption arc here. No happy ending. Just a middle-aged man in a one-bedroom apartment, learning too late how to be the person he should have been all along. The other day, Dr. Martinez asked me what I'd learned from all this. I thought about it for a long time before answering. I learned that the thing I was most afraid of, being betrayed, I made happen, I said, not because Sarah was untrustworthy, but because I couldn't trust. I learned that fear is a self-fulfilling prophecy. I learned that testing love is just another way of ending it. I learned that some lessons cost everything to learn. She nodded. And what will you do with those lessons? Live differently, I said. Be better. Make sure that if I ever have the privilege of being loved again, I don't destroy it by being too afraid to believe in it. That's all I can do now. That's all any of us can do when we've made mistakes we can't undo. Learn from them, carry them, let them reshape us into something wiser, if not something whole. I made a fake online profile to test my wife. I lost everything, and I deserve to. But maybe if I do the work, if I really commit to healing and changing and being better, then someday this story won't just be about what I destroyed. Maybe someday it'll be about what I built from the ruins. Maybe someday I'll be capable of the kind of love Sarah deserved, the kind that trusts, that supports, that sees someone struggling and reaches out instead of pulling away. Maybe, but that's a story for another day, if it happens at all. This story ends here, in this small apartment, with a man who finally understands that the worst betrayals are the ones we commit in the name of protecting ourselves from betrayal. This story ends with regret that cannot be undone, only carried. This story ends with the truth I'll spend the rest of my life learning to accept. You cannot love what you cannot trust, and you cannot trust what you insist on testing. I tested my wife. I failed the test, and the marriage died, not from her weakness, but from mine. That's the truth I'm living with now. That's the truth I'll carry forever. And I hope, God, I hope, that telling you this story, exposing my shame and my regret and my failures, might save someone else from making the same mistake. If you're reading this and you're thinking about testing your partner, about creating elaborate schemes to catch them in betrayal, about treating love like a crime to be proven, stop. Please stop. Trust them or leave them. But don't torture them. Don't make them fail a test they don't even know they're taking. Don't destroy something real because you're afraid it might not be. Don't be me. Don't make my mistakes. Don't learn this lesson the way I had to learn it, by losing everything and everyone you love. Because some things, once broken, cannot be repaired. Some trust, once violated, cannot be restored. Some love, once tested, cannot survive. And you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been if you'd just chosen to believe instead of chosen to doubt. Trust me on this. I'm an expert now in regret. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.